Hi everyone, welcome to my kitchen. I'm Amy from Neurotic Mom Bakes, and up to now I've only shown you how to make American buttercream, different flavors of American buttercream. We're gonna venture out and we are going to try Swiss meringue buttercream. And once it's made, when I can show it to you, the consistency, we'll talk about the pros and cons to using Swiss meringue versus American buttercream and when you want to use which type of buttercream. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a couple inches of water into a saucepan and get it simmering, because we're gonna need that in just a minute. While it's heating up, I'm going to need 7 eggs. I need the whites from 7 large eggs, whites only. And I will separate them separately, and then after each one, put it in the bowl. That way, if you accidentally get a piece of yolk and you've like cracked 6 of them, you don't have to start all over. Okay, I have got my 7 egg whites in here. And now, that's ready. Now I'm going to add 2 cups of granulated sugar. Whisk it together. It's going to be nice and thick. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this bowl. Make sure it's a metal bowl. I'm going to set this bowl over the simmering water. I don't want the bottom of the bowl to touch the water, and I'm going to whisk continuously for about 4 minutes until I'm going to dip my finger in, and if I can rub my fingers and not feel any sugar granules, then it's ready. So I'm just going to set this over and just whisk continuously. Do not stop. Some simmering water. So what we're essentially doing is we are cooking the egg whites without curdling them. That's why you have to do the water bath and stir continuously. And then they're going to reach a certain temperature. You can use a thermometer. However, you'll know it's done when the sugar is completely dissolved. I usually do the finger test, so I can't off the top of my head remember the exact temperature, but I'll look it up and find it and post it if you're concerned at all about getting it exactly right. Okay, it's been about 3.5 minutes. Just be careful, this gets hot. You don't want kids or pets around. Okay, so it's frothy on the top, and when I rub my fingers together, no sugar granules. So we are good to go. I'm gonna turn this off, and we're going to move back over to our stand mixer, and I'm gonna pour this in my stand mixer. All right, now I'm going to use the whisk attachment, and I'm going to beat this on medium-high for at least 10 minutes, up to 15 to 18 minutes, because what you wanna do is you wanna get nice, shiny, glossy, almost stiff peaks. It's kind of a softer peak, and you want this bowl to be completely cooled down. This is a time-consuming part. This takes a while. You can see the steam coming up. We wanna cool this down. All right, this has been going probably 16 minutes, and it's cooled down significantly. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm going to switch to, can you see these? Let me just show you, these kind of glossy peaks. It's not stiff like a meringue, but it still has, you know, holds, has body. If you feel like it's not cooling down, you can put it in the fridge for 5-7 minutes and then bring it back and continue mixing until it's cooled down. Now at this point, I'm gonna put on my paddle attachment now. I have 3 half sticks of unsalted butter. That's 1.5 cups or 339 grams. And I want them just barely softened, but still a little cold, just a little. You don't want completely room temperature butter. So I took these out of my fridge about an hour ago, and they're good. They're not completely soft. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put my mixer on kind of medium-low speed, and I'm going to drop the butter in 1 tablespoon at a time, and I'm not gonna add the next tablespoon until the first one is fully mixed. So again, time-consuming for this one. And the reason why you need your meringue cooled down is the butter just will melt if it's too warm, and you'll have a big soupy mess. Okay, now I'm going to give you some troubleshooting tips, because if your temperature of this buttercream isn't exactly right, it's going to do one of two things. It's either going to get too loose, too soupy, too runny, or it's going to be too cold and the fat is going to separate back out and it's going to break or look curdled. And you can fix that, no problem. It's not ruined. Do not despair. I have been able to fix it every single time. Let me just show you this. Mine may have been a little too warm, just probably because I was filming and wanting to rush a little bit. It's a little bit too runny to pipe. When you pipe, you want it to hold its consistency. So what I'm gonna do here, let me just take this off actually, is I'm just gonna pop it in my fridge for 5 to 10 minutes, bring it back out, give it a good whip for 30 seconds, and you should be good to go. If it's still too loose, just keep going back and forth from the fridge to your mixer, because all you need to do is you need to get the butter back firm in there, incorporated with the egg whites. So that's the only problem. Now, if it's separated and it looks curdled, you're gonna get that water bath. You're gonna set that back over the water bath and stir it, and then as soon as the outsides start to look liquidy, mix it really well. It should be back incorporated because you've warmed it up, and then come back and keep whipping until it cools down and gets to the consistency that you want. So I'm gonna put this in the fridge. It's just a little bit. Okay, this has been in my fridge for 7, 8 minutes. You can feel the bowl is completely chilled even a little bit. That's the great thing about metal, is it will conduct whichever temperature it's in. And now I put my whisk attachment back on. I'm just gonna whip it. Just get some air back into it. And it shouldn't take too long. Then I'm gonna switch it down to low. And at this point, I'm gonna add just a teaspoon of vanilla-ish and a pinch of salt. And if you're going to add coloring, this is the stage to add the coloring. All right, let's check this out and talk about it for a minute, and why or when you would want to use Swiss meringue buttercream. Now, you saw it's kind of a pain to make, right? There are a lot of steps involved. It's temperamental, things can go wrong easily. However, the first time I made this and tasted it, I know why people make this and use it. It is so good. It's like lighter, and it's not as sweet. So a lot of people complain sometimes that American buttercream is too sweet. I disagree. I just don't think you can get too sweet. I like it, but if you're going for less sweet, then you'll want to do a Swiss meringue buttercream. So the pros, it tastes amazing, right? Another pro, because the eggs are fully cooked through and there's no other dairy in here, you can leave this at room temperature. I read somewhere up to 5 days. That sounds really long to me, but I have left it at room temperature all day and used it later, and it was fine. The other pro, this does not crust over like American buttercream. If you've worked with American buttercream, you know that just within 5 or 10 minutes of it just sitting, the top will be crusted, or when you frost a cake and you let it sit for 5 minutes, the outside will be crusted. It's supposed to do that. So this you don't need to cover up, it won't crust over, whereas American buttercream, I feel like I have to put plastic right down on top of it so it doesn't crust over. And American buttercream, I have left it at room temperature for a few hours, just because when you're like at a wedding cake will sit out for a couple hours. However, you probably need to stick it back in the fridge after too long, because it has the dairy in there. But then if you are decorating on a cake, like say you're painting, you are going to want to use American buttercream in that case, because you want that crusted over kind of canvas so you can work on it without messing up the buttercream, where this stays soft and you can pipe, but it's difficult to do anything else on it unless it's really, really light touch. So there's just kind of the differences. Time is a big issue. This takes at least a half an hour. That's if everything goes right. it'll take a lot longer if you need to go warm it back up or cool it back down to get it just right. And just keep in mind, you can't ruin Swiss meringue buttercream. If you, let's say you left it in the fridge too long and you came and beat it again and then it was too stiff and kind of separated, you can just warm it back up and just go back and forth until and you'll get the hang of it. You'll kind of know what feels right temperature-wise, what looks right, etc. So I just wanted to show you this too. I made this yesterday using Swiss meringue buttercream, and you can see it does pipe nicely. It's frozen right now, so I can touch it, but it pipes nicely, it holds its shape, and it really does. It tastes amazing. I love it, so I can see why people will go to the extra trouble to make it. So hopefully you enjoyed this tutorial, learned something new, we'll be able to try something new, and if you want to see more recipes just like this, subscribe to my channel. See ya.